We now return to Let's Play Suzerain. Alright. So, in the studying of the very thick codex to this game, I've read through the first areas up here as well as Agenland just a little bit. I'm going to have to go bit by bit through the rest of this, but in order to keep the game going, let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. Read the report from Wholesword. Logistical issues. The mayor of Wholesword reports that the rising population and fast urban expansion has resulted in high levels of congestion in city traffic. Logistics report underlines increased traffic and slow transportation routes as the biggest problems of the capital. The mayor also reported that the absence of a well-designed, large, land-based logistics center where all transporters come together is one of the greatest problems for domestic transporters because Wholesword is a big metropolis. Transporters are scattered all over Wholesword, having established such centers in 10 different districts. Read the report from Wholesword. General Staff gathers. The General Staff convened right after the election to congratulate our victory. All branches of the Swordish armed forces were represented in the meeting that took place at Camp Strongarm with massive security measures. The chief of the armed forces, Vulcan Kruger, made a public press statement highlighting the increasing chances of military confrontation in eastern Mercopa and requested support to strengthen the military. Yeah. So if we go up here, we can see, clicking on, like, Rumburg, for example, we've got bad relations, and they are overwhelmingly powerful militarily. Looking at our friends here, we have a weak military, but good relations with Agnolia, and we have strong military, but neutral relations with Volksland. So, the relations here are that Rumburg is very militarily aggressive, and in the past, at least, has voiced interest in moving southward. The government has since changed, I believe, since that happened, but they are still a very militaristic country. Agnolia apparently used to own a lot more territory. They have had conflict with Rumburg, losing the city of Dome, which used to be part of them, and then Agenland also used to be part of them once upon a time. So, we do have good relations with them still, probably because there's a large group here of ethnic crossing, but they are weak military supporters. They're probably going to need our help more than anything. Volksland here is probably one of our focus points, I think, for getting friends in the region. But they have also had contention with Agnolia because when these guys had their revolution, Agnolia decided to swoop in and take this island from them. I don't know, it did not imply in the codex that there was any ongoing contention about this, but I don't understand right now what their relation is, and that may come up. But as far as the military thing is concerned, obviously we need to focus on our own internal problems and getting our industry up before we can even really dump a ton of money into our military focus, so we're going to have to hopefully play a little bit of diplomacy with Rumburg here. I don't know how much time the game gives me for things, if random events happen or anything like that, but we are in no shape for military at the moment, so we need to be making some friends. Anyway, let's go to a briefing on the current political situation at the office of the President in the Maroon Palace. Peter Vectern arrived a couple minutes early and sat across from me. He was struggling to hold back his smile. "We did it, Anton. We won. Finally. All those years with our noses to the grindstone paid off." Peter's eyes sparkled. The strain from the past months had put a damper on his usual rakish charm. But today he was looking and acting more like his old self. He loosened his tie and undid the top 2 buttons of his shirt. "Enjoying the new secretary I picked out for you? Thought you'd appreciate her gorgeous set of talents. It's a shame the rest of your staff aren't as easy on the eyes." He gestured to the slight paunch that protruded over his waistband. "But hey, back in university, did you ever imagine we would be sitting here in the Maroon Palace? We have to celebrate this great victory." "Yeah, let's celebrate at the ball. Just hang in there until the evening." Looking forward to it. Evelyn hopes to congratulate you in person there. Okay. Good to know. It's been some time since last I saw her. I think it was Frank's birthday. We've barely had enough time for our families over these past months, haven't we? Peter had a wistful look in his eyes. He and Evelyn had never been able to have kids of their own. During our campaign, the opposition had floated the rumor that he'd fathered illegitimate children during his wilder years, but had never been substantiated. The door swung open, and Lucian Galade? Let's say Galade. My chief strategist walked in. He was a compact man with sharp, bird-like features. After briefly surveying the room from wall to wall, he sat down, poured a glass of water, and opened his briefcase in a series of quick, graceful movements. What's he about? Lawyer, CSO, several companies. Successful strategist. He's an expert on law and media, okay? He was one of my first supporters. Alright. Gentlemen, the tall case clock in the room struck 3 o'clock. Damn, you're exactly on time. Hello, Peter. Lucian then turned towards me. He very slightly bowed his head. Lucian, how are you? I am ready and able, sir. Lucian spoke in soft, clipped tones that immediately drew your attention towards what he had to say. Peter and I waited for him to proceed. Let's start by evaluating our current situation. The majority of the Sordish people demand change. They are more concerned about the economy than the Constitution, but they blame the system for their problems. People are losing their trust in our democracy. Why do you think radicals like Bernard Circus are becoming more popular? Everyone's expecting us to bring the change the last government did not. Bernard Circus. Poet, novelist, short story writer, and politician. Really influenced. Dare? A romantic communist. Joined the Red Youth. Survived the purge of Seoul? Okay. Okay. So he's not... He doesn't belong to a party. But he is influential. Franz Richter, leader of the Reformists, believe that true change can only be accomplished by transferring some of our powers to the Assembly. I will move into the details of their demand shortly. Probably. That's what we did run on, right? We need to listen to the people if we want to serve this country. It's exactly what we campaigned for, a true change that will move the country forward. We will need many allies against the old guard in the government. It's just a faction of the old guard. Key organizations harbor the leaders of the faction. It is commonly agreed they were installed during the Seoul era as a security mechanism. Okay. Mr. Richter managed to persuade many members of Assembly to give their support for drafting a new constitution. Reformist politicians are quickly increasing in number. Okay, this is the guy, head of the People's Freedom and Justice Party. Looks to be pro-business. Strong opposition to Seoul. Okay. While the reformist wing inside our party is still a minority, they would have a tripartisan majority in the Assembly, especially if they unite with Franz Richter. Well, Richter could be a potential ally in our goal to maintain a majority in the Assembly. He's definitely key in this. The reformists' demands are clear. They want to limit the president's veto powers, ensure the Supreme Court is independent, and can take away the court's right to vote on constitutional amendments. I agree with this. So, political overview? No. Country overview. So here we go. We can see all of the things that are currently active in our policies. One of them is that the constitutional amendments require not only getting 2/3 majority in the General Assembly, but also approval of the Supreme Court. And for one thing, I don't believe that's what the court is for. Secondly, the court is also heavily packed with old guard. So we have our work cut out for us if we want any reforms. Can we bring that back up? Okay. They want to limit the president's veto power. Okay, da-da-da-da. I support the reformists. We need a proper balance of power. Must listen to the demands, otherwise we're no different than the previous administrations. Alright, let's support the reformists. I agree, we can't ignore the winds of change after all. The old guard will do its best to preserve the Constitution. Chief Justice Hawker and his allied judges have a great influence over the Supreme Court, which will be tough to break. The court also has the final say over constitutional legislation. Without their approval, we cannot even change it. We'll need a comprehensive bill to balance the power structure more fairly. I agree, the old guard won't like this though. A comprehensive reform that would make the reformists happy would mean maintaining a balance between all branches of government, which means removing your absolute veto as well. The reformists demand all loopholes in the Constitution are closed. Well, we'll have many challenges ahead. Stay somewhat neutral. We can figure it out. Our party holds 130 out of 250 seats in the Assembly. We've got the power. However, to reform the Constitution, we must receive a 2/3 majority in the Grand National Assembly, which is 166 votes, and a simple majority in the Supreme Court that equates to 6 votes. Which means we need to get those fence-sitters on our side. After we have settled on how to proceed, we will need to talk with our party figures. Our first goal must be to get the 150 signatures needed to start the process. Following the green light from the USP, we will reach out to the party leaders to see if they would back our draft. The last step is to convince the justices of the court. The entire process will take a long time. We must start working with reform committees to evaluate all possibilities for a new constitution as soon as possible. We will write a more democratic constitution with the reformists. It's what we've been preparing for internally. Don't forget that promise is what got us elected. The key thing here will be strengthening the power of the Assembly, which we already lead with a majority. Peter nods in agreement. Yes, the divisions of power need to be rebalanced for a better Sordland. According to the initial draft we made with the reformists, there are 2 changes to the Constitution that are not open for discussion. Lucian opens the dossier. First, the Supreme Court will no longer vote on constitutional amendments. Second, the President's absolute veto will be taken away. This can be replaced with a limited veto system by fixing the current loopholes. I have no problems with these clauses. Let's work with the reformists. Yes, sir. Lucian nodded. We will form a reform committee together with all parties and start reaching out to all stakeholders in the Assembly and the Court for a new constitution. By later in the year, we should have an idea of the reform contents and what the other parties want. Lucian takes notes. Another important point. We must be aware of the Lotharberg Group. The oligarchs convene under this organization to influence economic policies. Conrath led it for a long time before falling ill. The new leader is Mr. Walter Tusk, a millionaire businessman, investor, and current spokesperson of the Lotharberg Group. He owns the Economists Group, which publishes the well-known newspaper The Economists, and a major shareholder in Swedish Steel. Okay. According to reports, some members of the National Business Council are in their pockets. Tusk and the group will surely try to bribe us in exchange for special economic protections. I'll enter a dialogue with them eventually. We need to be diplomatic. Wise approach. It's good to understand and see if we can reach a middle ground. Lucian looked at Peter. As far as I know, Marcel Coronti has some strong ties to this group. His influence could definitely be an asset for us, but I'm sure he'll want something in return. Who is Marcel Coronti? A Sordish businessman, philanthropist, entrepreneur who is son of the media proprietor Conrad Coronti. He operates the HSO Advertising, largest advertising company in Sordland. He's also a board member of the HOS, Sordland's largest conglomerate operating in the media, energy, construction, trade, and tourism industries. Previously served as chairman of Resorts, a luxury hotel group. Okay. So he is a media mogul. Group's influence is an important force, one that we could use for our administration's advantage. Depend on our economic policies. They can't move a finger without us. And Tusk is heading the group. We should make sure he's on our side. What? Oh, this Tusk. Right. Should we use this to our own? I mean, here's the thing, like, we're already discussing politics here, and in the fact that we are going to possibly be using one side or another. We'll need good press, but influence could definitely be an asset for us. Well, I guess we should probably do that then, huh? I'm aware of Mr. Caronti's wide network. That could come in handy. We just need to be careful with him. He looks like the lesser evil, but it could very quickly turn out to be the other way around. We need to tread carefully on all sides with all power players to survive our term. I need to underline the seriousness of the situation. The military and the general staff are a powerful element in the state, and as history tells us, a dangerous one too. We do have some room to make structural changes by reducing their budget, for example, but it is quite limited. Well, this is true too. We can't reduce our defensive capability and anger the general staff. However, right now we should not be focused on pouring all of our money into it. I want to receive the advice of the military before making up my mind. It is sound to listen to them, but they have very biased and narrow opinions. Patriotism clouds their minds. General Kruger is a specter of the past. Four-star General, current Chief of the Sordid Armed Forces, and Chief of the General Staff. He supported Lutheran's coup, but later turned against him after the mass executions. Okay. Defense Minister Josef Lancia is more loyal to us compared to General Kruger. A fact that can obviously be changed with our actions. Either way, I see a potential rift between the two since they are clearly of different minds. What is his deal? Security professional who serves as Minister of Defense, member of the USP, captain during the Civil War, served Seoul. Okay. National fame for his heroism. Joseph became a popular figure after the war and still well respected among nationalists. Okay. I've been promoting reformation of the army into a professional rather than conscripted force. He also was a critic of Alfonso's policies and gave support to me for major conservative support in the 53 elections. Okay. If we act strongly against the military, both those guys will unite against us. I agree with Lucian. We need to tread carefully here. Lucian looked at his watch. Well, gentlemen, precisely 30 minutes. This concludes our political briefing for today. Our next meeting will be about our media strategy. Talk to you soon, sir. I will keep in touch. See you both at the next meeting. Lucian and Peter bid their farewells and left. Alright. Well, there is yet more going on. So, let's look at the news. Committee for Reforms. Speaker Gloria Torrey said that a committee which includes all three political parties of the Assembly has been formed for the preparation of potential changes to the Constitution. The committee has been asked to submit a comprehensive report to find a solution for the current problematic state of affairs in the governmental institutions. Torrey, bring her up over here. Torrey said USP wants to appeal to the people of Sordland to help in maintaining stability and order in the state. The details of the committee regarding its actual topics or its members have not been clarified. And then this is the last in there. Support in Assembly grows for campaign finance bill. A bill to change the criteria for the allocation of public funds to political parties is proposed by Representative Albin Clavin from the USP. The bill aims to change the criteria from the proportion of votes won in general elections to proportion of seats won by a political party in the Grand National Assembly. This would result in an increase of about 28 million SR to the governing United Sordland Party, which will benefit the most from the proposed bill. The new bill would give political parties an annual amount of 500,000 SR per member of Assembly. I do not know what the currency for this country is, so we're gonna just call that Sordish rupees. I don't actually know what the R is. My microphone cord falling all over the place. Sordish National League starts season. A very exciting day marks the Sordish National League kickoff with SK Lockhaven and Benfey FC match. The Benfey, where's Benfey? I can't move this. It must be over here in this province. The league, consisting of nearly 10 teams, has been gaining more and more popularity in recent decades, with tickets dropping significantly in prices, leading to increased accessibility. Football fans are looking forward to one of the key events of the league, the match between the two most competent teams, Enrica and Gelsord. I'm going to have to figure out how we're going to pronounce G's in this made-up country. Geopolitico. Rumburg coming south? Our foreign policy analysts, who are reviewing the recent aggressive military and diplomatic developments of Rumburg, have come to the conclusion that it is highly likely Rumburg will keep trying to push further south, threatening the territories of Sordland, Wayland, and possibly Agnolia. The annexation of Dome many decades ago was just the beginning. Rumburg seems to be on a quest to secure all strategic resources in East Mercopa. Mercopa is the continent? Or at least the region that we are in. And we are apparently in the eastern part of that, amongst the Markian Sea. So, I don't know. There is a lot of fluff and whatnot, and I have said that I don't necessarily want to take up the episodes reading through all of this stuff. But if there is interest, I can go ahead and do some of that. I'll maybe have separate episodes just dedicated to like the lore and all the background stuff for these people. I did say I was going to go through and pick out some of the important bits, and I just discovered that there's an actual in-game note-taking thing, so even the designers knew that this game was going to be overwhelming and full of information. But if we want to actually go into all of this stuff, I can definitely do that. But let's look at what happened in Dare today. Increasing homelessness. The region of Bergia is among the worst hit regions in Sordland, where homelessness has skyrocketed since the economic recession. The number of homeless in the city of Dare is more likely to have increased by 25% in the last year. The rise was particularly stark amongst Bludish people, where homelessness increased 72% in just 6 years. It is reported that homelessness among ethnic minorities has reached the highest level in more than a decade. The Bludish minority of the region now account for up to 47% of all homeless people there. Okay. If I recall, the Reform Committee has been formed to discuss possibility of a new constitution. Okay. We're an influential OMEC member. OMEC is the economic group of this region. We thankfully have an experienced diplomatic corps. We have a lack of allies, and we are facing Rumburg expansionism. Right. The Organization for Mercopan Economic Cooperation stimulates economic progress and increases continental trade. But what was I looking for? Political overview, maybe. Okay. So the leader of the independents here, Mr. Monsoon Leek, is a Swordish politician of Blutish descent. Now, I don't know what all of the independents are, and we've only got 10 in here, but if we could pull them by fixing maybe some of the homeless problems down here and helping out the ethnic minorities, maybe we would gain their support. We need to pull off some members, probably, of the PFJP in order to even get our 150 to enact some of our stuff. So any amount that we can get is obviously going to be very beneficial, but God, everything has a drill down. It's crazy. It's cool, but I don't even really know where to begin. But anyway, here's our government. Here's our ministers. And oh boy, yeah. So there's a hell of a lot, and I'm not joking when I say that the game is going to be very slow. You know what? I think we've got time for just a little bit more here, so let's keep going. Read the report. Public opinion report. People's views on the need for democratic reform in the government structure has changed over the last decade. Reformist propaganda from the leader of the People's Freedom and Justice Party, Franz Richter, have resulted in a massive increase in the demands for democratic reforms. It is estimated that currently 55% of the population supports the ideas. Okay. We have a briefing or a meeting on media strategy. I don't actually know which one we want to go with. I don't know if one is... I did see that we had two options last time. Did we lose one? We're still in Chapter 1, and as far as I know, it's all... This takes a while before we can actually even move on to the next bit. Let's take a briefing on the current economic situation. Simon Hole, Gus Manger, and Lilius Graff were about to arrive at the White Room for our scheduled economic meeting. This was the room in the Maroon Palace where all important meetings were held. Two assistants arrived first, carrying a heavy projector. They stood with it by the door, waiting for the ministers to enter. From the hallway I heard Lilius Graff's voice. She was using the patient, almost motherly tone she often took in heated arguments. Gus, do you really think that such an economically advanced area is more in need of investment than Agenland? Lilius, my goodness, my interior minister strode in. She was clad in shades of brown and beige, the only spot of color on a bright yellow nearest star on her necklace. Gus followed close behind. Staff Sergeant in the Women's Army Corps, served as mayor of Arvery, political career, as a public advocate, reformation of various housing, finance, and security policies. Sol picked her to replace the mayor of Holsword. Policies on urban planning and public education transformed Holsword's economy and boosted her popularity in the capital. She is credited for economic booms in both Arvery and Holsword and known for supporting socially conservative politics. She is respected as an expert on urban development and police relations. One of the most influential supporters of my candidacy, she's arguably brought with her a large conservative support of the elections. Okay. Gus Manger. Don't be an idiot, Lilius. What about the unemployment crisis the greater Holsword and Gelsland regions have been going through? These areas are our economic heartland. Gus curled his hands into fists. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development his temper hadn't changed since his days in the Alfonso administration, but neither had his reputation for getting things done. His far-reaching network of connections was unlike any other. Agriculture and Rural Development is made... As a businessman, he made major investments in Enrica and owns small businesses around the city. He also holds a minority ownership of the football club Enrica in his hometown. Okay, he's often famed for successful agricultural policies and credited for the long-awaited development of the rural regions of Sordland as minister during Alfonso's presidency. Prior to that, he worked as a minister of the economy. Okay. Simon Hall quickly stepped between the two ministers without looking at either of them. He cleared his throat. "Good morning, Mr. President." "Good morning, everyone." Let's see this guy real quick. Minister of the Economy currently. Commerce and Energy. Co-chairman of the National Business Council. Vested interest. As the former chairman of the central bank, Simon is known to possess great influence over the economy and is regarded as one of the top experts on financial matters. He was a big supporter of the free market reforms of Alfonso, but criticized his other policies and blamed the recession on his rushed handling of the reforms. Simon is often famed for his promotion of free market economy and his analysis of the economic boom in Arcasia. He wrote several books and articles on the economic inequality in the Markian region, which earned him praise from economists, both in Sordland and abroad. Okay. "I'm very well and motivated, Mr. Rayne. It seems our ministers are feeling the same." I mean, do we really need to derail this immediately? I guess we can just greet them. Sure. Just as expected. How's it going, Gus and Lilius? "It's looking good, sir, although there seems to be a lot of work that requires attention, especially about lifting people out of poverty. Certainly a challenge." "I am feeling fairly confident about the current state of affairs. We've begun restructuring local governments and introducing new safety measures. Off to a good start." "Good. I'm confident in your abilities." "That is appreciated. We will not disappoint you." "Thank you, Mr. President. Now I'd like to show you the latest economic situation." Simon pulled a silk handkerchief out of his pocket and briefly wiped his glasses. "My staff and I have comprehensively analyzed every aspect of—" He is interrupted by a groan from one of the assistants by the door, both of whom are now visibly struggling to hold up the heavy projector. "Oh, you can put that there." He pointed below the painting of President Sol. The assistants placed the projector next to the table and installed the white screen on the wall. "Leave now. I mean, thank you, and please leave now." The assistants left the cabinet. I was reminded that Simon had never quite had a way with people, but his facility with numbers had made him the most sought-after economic specialist in Sordland. Simon started looking at his slides. He always carried documentation around with him. Lilius leaned to the table and spoke. "Simon, what happened to the new police station construction in Estord?" While going through his briefcase, he paused for a moment to answer. "It got stalled due to a government property boundary issue. I've been meaning to look at it." "I can take a look at that one. Estord needs all the security help it can get." "What's up with Estord?" "City of Estord is the most oil-rich city in Sordland." "Okay." Geographically is between two rivers flowing down from the Sorn Mountains between Sordland and Rumburg, is beneath the tall Arar Mountains. I want to know what province this is in. Nargis region. New railway built to connect the Nargis region to Rumburg. Okay. Recent worsening of relations with Rumburg, the boom of Lockhaven in the 40s economic crisis caused a decline of the city that lost nearly half its population to migration to Lockhaven. Okay, that's something to think about, I guess. Sure, more time for me to spend on analyses. His eyes glittered when he finally found the slides he was looking for. There have been some developments about the Sordish Wren, that's our money, Wren. The Wrens, losing further value today. We've been trying to stabilize it with the central bank. The recession of '51 put enormous pressure on the economy, resulting in the collapse of the value of our currency. The entire situation was a significant cause of concern for our administration. What would you like to know about the current economic situation? What's the state of the recession, I guess? The economy's been in a recession of about -6% in the past year. The average GDP has dropped from 15,000 Ren per capita to 10,000 from '51 to now. This administration's success depends on our ability to stop the recession. The sooner we reach GDP growth, the better. What's our GDP and debt situation? Our current GDP is 310 billion Ren, and the national debt is 400 billion. It's still hard to fathom that we lost nearly 150 billion in wealth. The past 3 years were tough. What's unemployment and inflation, right? Unemployment has skyrocketed and is now a staggering 16%, and the inflation is at a relative high of 7%. Unemployment is increasing crime and drug use. We need to get people off the streets. The inflation isn't helping our average citizen either. Okay, I've got all the information needed. Let's move on to the economic strategy. Simon scattered the paper stack in front of him in an orderly manner and took a final look at his notes before clearing his throat. As you can see, the situation is alarming, but not everything is negative. The extensive privatization program of Alfonso left us a large budget surplus which we can use to stabilize the crisis. The primary subject we need to settle on is what general path we will take in our term. Solonomics-based nationalization... that should be a hyphen. Solonomics-based nationalization happened in the 30s, and Alfonso's privatization began during the end of the 40s. What will our administration focus on? One of our main promises was to promote a free market economy to stop the recession. To be frank, I believed it is the only way out of the recession. I still do not support it. Why promote the private sector when we have qualified state-owned enterprises? Because the lack of competition has made them inefficient. Simon nodded. Well, okay. I kind of wanted to go over analyses of my thoughts here at the end of the episode, but here's my thinking. So, the biggest threat right now is the military. As with new and emerging democracies, it is always a threat to have coups and whatnot. Seeing as how that is a part of our own country's history, I think that is a very realistic look at it. And this is a historical thing too, because it's not even just like a modern happenstance. When kings and nobility were the military, a weak leader was usurped and overthrown constantly. So, having a weak foil to the military just invites military takeover, especially in our country, according to our own history. So the way you do that, the way you diffuse military power, is with economic power. And so promoting the free market and capitalism in our country, I feel, would kind of help boost a little bit of that. But again, history repeats, or at least cycles. Historically, you look at the weakening of the nobility and feudalism and whatnot, and the Black Death in Europe actually had a lot to do with it. But the rise of free states and the merchant class was a big deal. It enabled money to move away from the land that it was tied to under the nobility, and it gave a lot of power to the merchants and the trade. So that is also sort of a cautionary tale. We can foil military power with economic power, but then you concentrate the power in something new, a new class of oligarchs. So the way we fight that is basically democratizing everything and regulation and things like that. So it's going to be a balancing act. I do, at least to kick things into gear, I do want to focus upon industry and infrastructure and help out the free market economy. But we need to be careful that we don't just let loose everything. So as far as state-owned enterprises go, I'm not sure what we actually have, but we don't want to be privatizing services or anything like that. So, if we build rail and highway, we definitely don't want to. That needs to be under a government agency. But I don't know what that. Because I really think we could do both. Like we can use the infrastructure and all that stuff to stimulate the economic trade routes and everything within our own regions. Especially like in the north, in England, they don't have strong connections. And as an agricultural base, they're going to be weak economically anyway. So if we help build some trade infrastructure, maybe that would help a little bit, bring investment into the cities. That's one of the main things about England, is that they are lacking in investment opportunities. So if we can build a little bit more, especially at the trade ports, and get that going somehow. So I wonder if we're being given a choice here, or, I mean, we can ask some questions. What are the consequences of the free market? They're not many, but one could say that we are much more likely to be influenced by the world economy. It's important to think about this subject because the upswings of the world economy will reflect good on ours too. Yes, and when the global economy crashes, we go down with it. The structural problems of Solonomics were going to lead to a recession according to the predictions at the time anyway. Either way, even if we pick one of the doctrines, we retain the option to make economic choices on a case-by-case basis. That is, however, not recommended in my point of view. The last thing we need is a chaotic economic plan. Finally, something we can both agree on, Lilius. There is another important point which has a direct impact on our economy, the superpowers. We've done well not aligning ourselves with any one of them. Now, economically speaking, an isolationist policy overall could only work if we were to reap the benefits of both spheres and their rivalry. This is very dangerous to attempt, but still possible. We must be very cautious. There are schemes being devised about Sordland. We cannot give in to their wants now or in the future, otherwise our countries will be turned into a pawn. Okay, so as far as I know, Contana is supporting Rumland, Rumburg, whatever. And so if we piss them off too much, they may... And did I just read that at the beginning, or was that something I read elsewhere? Maybe it was in the news. It is thought that they had influence in our own civil war here. Sordland will not be controlled by any nations. Time will show if staying neutral will work out. Probably this one. We have to be realistic here. We're in no position militarily or economically right now. We must make it work to protect our country and our values. There is no other way. We need to be open to other possibilities. Arcasia is a strong country, and if we end up in their sphere, Sordland would increase its influence in the world. The deals we would get would surely bring us out of recession. In return for what? Our independence? I mean, this is true. When the time comes, I hope you will make the right decision, for our own good. Simon cleared his throat again. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Minister Vichy will be in charge of informing you on those types of foreign policy decisions. We must first decide on our internal economic plan. Simon puts forward a legal document outlining the possibilities with both economic doctrines instead. The cabinet members looked at me. We have to thank Solona's planned economy for the boom. Clearly shows success of the system. Let's finish what Alfonso started with the capitalist free market reforms. This path is going to enrich Sordland. What's our long-term economic schedule? Picking a construction company, trade relations, tax reform, and privatization initiatives would be some of them. Sticking to a solid planned economy strategy will be the right call. The 5-year plans were fruitful in the past. Would a free market focus bring us stronger allies? It would make Arcasia look at our country in a more positive light. They are proponents of the free market economy. The influence Arcasia has on the world economy is extensive. Our economic strategy should be based on internal reasoning, though. Well, we did say we were going for free market. We can always rope that in with regulation. And I think that our biggest support right now leans towards this way. Let's finish what Alfonso started with capitalist free market reforms. His path was going to enrich Sordland. The recession was the direct result of his free market reforms. History must note that the reason for the recession was because Alfonso was betrayed by his party. That sounds like waffling. That is not true. There is plenty of time for him to do it. If you can't make change happen in 2 years, then you are at fault. Let's move on. What are your final thoughts then, Mr. President? Critical institutions must remain in state control. We must be fully responsible in delivering services. Well, there we go. We should look at opportunities like privatization to create financial resources. A market economy doesn't require as much guidance and could help us attract foreign capital and let them run it. But also let them run our economy. It is hard to fully agree or disagree with these options. We need critical institutions to remain in state control. Few could be, and it wouldn't be negative, but either way, you make the choices. So, what will our general economic plan promote? A free economy as we promised. I can't say that I agree with this. Lilius looks displeased. Now that there is clarity on which direction we are heading, I will work on a good plan accordingly. This concludes our meeting. At our next gathering, we will talk about the upcoming infrastructure investment plan. Now that the economic direction has been taken, the ministers dispersed for lunch at the Maroon Palace. Oof, lots of consequences. Not necessarily consequences, but just happenings. Okay, well, we'll read all about that next time.